This week we will go through modules 12 and 13, which is over aquatic and terrestrial biomes. So you can see our essential knowledge for terrestrial biomes and for aquatic biomes as well. We're going to start with terrestrial biomes. They are all defined by their average annual temperatures, annual precipitation, and what plant forms are found on land. The life forms in a biome are well adapted for their environment, and you will notice that there are similar looking living things in the same biome, but that are in different parts of the world. The locations of biomes has changed over time and will keep changing because of things like continental drift. So think about, the changes from Pangea to now, and because of global climate changes. This is a map of the distribution of the world's biomes. It's nice and color-coded, which I appreciate. And then here you can see two types of climate diagrams. So the one on the left shows the biomes based on their average annual temp and based on their, let me get that out of the way, and based on their annual precipitation. So you can see that the tropical rainforest is the hottest and wettest, followed closely by the temperate rainforest. The diagram on the right is called a climatograph or climatogram. For a biome or a particular location, it shows both precipitation and temperature by month, all on the same graph. So we will start with the tundra. It is cold there, and there is little precipitation, as you can see based on its climatograph. It has really low growing vegetation like moss, woody shrubs, and lichens, and a growing season of only about 4 months. One of the characteristics of the tundra is that it has permafrost, which is a permanently frozen layer of soil. And so this is why we'll have some low growing vegetation, because their roots have to be relatively shallow. Next is the taiga, which is also called the boreal forest. Here it is also cold and also has low precipitation, but it will have some coniferous or evergreen trees. Still, a pretty short growing season. An issue for the taiga is that it has been logged a lot. So, lots of deforestation going on there. Next is the temperate rainforest. If you ever come to school one day and I'm gone, it's because I've moved here or because I'm sick. But I think this would be my ideal biome. It has a moderate temperature, high precipitation, it's coastal, and found in very few places around the world, which you can see from the small little blips of color on the map to your right. But it has lots of plants like big trees and ferns and mosses. This area has also been logged quite a bit and is a location of some tree plantations. Tree plantations are areas where people will grow usually just 1 or 2 species of tree, and they grow it until it is mature enough to be logged, and then they log it and start over. We live in a temperate seasonal forest, which has mostly deciduous trees like oak or hickory. We tend to have a lot of maple around here as well. This is a pretty productive biome, so the issue is that lots of land has been cleared for agriculture. One of the things to note about this biome is that when you look at precipitation, it's relatively similar from month to month. The shrubland or chaparral is characterized by hot, dry summers and mild, rainy winters. It does have a 12-month growing period, but it still has low enough precipitation to limit plant growth. This area is prone to wildfires, but the things that live there, like its flora and fauna, are adapted for both fires and drought. The temperate grassland, which is where our Great Plains are in the United States, has hot, dry summers and cold winters. Fires are also common here, and you will see lots of grasses and non-woody flowering plants. These are plants that flowers but are not like woody like trees. This area is also adapted to fires and contains lots of grazing animals. Next is the tropical rainforest, where it is warm and wet and super productive. Of the terrestrial biomes, this is the most productive. It has a high biodiversity, but the problem is that it is being destroyed at an alarming rate, likely within our lifetimes. The savanna has warm temperatures and distinct wet and dry seasons, which you can see on the climatograph. So that blue line is the precipitation. There's a ton of rain in like the summer months, like June, July, August, and basically no rain the rest of the year. It has lots of shrubs, grasses, and trees, but an issue here is that a lot of the area has been converted for agriculture and for grazing animals. The desert is hot and dry and basically has no precipitation. So you'll see lots of cacti and succulents in these areas that are naturally there, not stuff people have planted. Next, we will go through our aquatic biomes. They are characterized by their salinity, depth, and water flow. So salinity is like the salt content. So we have freshwater with low salinity and marine with a higher salinity. Freshwater is important to humans because of drinking water. Marine biomes are important for us because they are the largest suppliers of oxygen worldwide, like even more than plants. So it is equally important that we keep our aquatic biomes happy and healthy. We'll start with freshwater and work our way to marine. So streams and rivers will have flowing water that originate from underground springs or from runoff. Streams, we say are a little more narrow, but the point where that a stream becomes a river, who's to say? Streams and fast rivers do not have many producers because of the flowing water, so they will rely on terrestrial inputs from what's around them. You will see some crustaceans and fish and lots of oxygen around the rapids, like you can usually see it bubbling up. The slower flowing rivers will have some rooted plants and algae as well. Lakes and ponds are standing water, and our lakes are divided into different zones. The littoral zone is shallow and where most of our emergent plants and algae grow. The limnetic zone is open water. Profundal is below that, but where there's no sunlight. And then the benthic zone is the muddy bottom. We classify lakes based on how productive they are. If they have low productivity, they are oligotrophic, but they're eutrophic if they have high productivity. And here is a diagram of the different zones. Freshwater wetlands are areas that are submerged or saturated for at least part of the year. They are shallow enough for emergent vegetation. And so when we think of our freshwater wetlands, we're thinking swamps, marshes, and bogs. These biomes are also pretty productive. They can take in large amounts of rainwater and release it slowly to reduce flooding and droughts. The problem is that more than half of the United States freshwater wetlands have been drained for agriculture development or reducing mosquitoes. But they are important for flood and drought control, so might see some issues with that in those areas. Salt marshes are a marine aquatic biome that you'll find along temperate climate coasts. They have lots of non-woody emergent vegetation, and many are found in estuaries where we have a mixing of the freshwater and the saltwater. There's lots of plants and algae, and they're really good at filtering contaminants. A lot of marine fish and shellfish larval stages will be here in the salt marsh. Next is the mangrove swamp. I think these things look freaking awesome with all of the roots and things from the trees sticking above the ground. You will find these along tropical coasts, and the trees have submerged roots. Mangrove trees protect the coast from erosion and storm damage, so it's very important, but they are also being destroyed a little bit too, because why not, right? The intertidal zone is the area between high tide and low tide, where you will find lots of algae, barnacles, sponges, mussels, crabs, and sea stars. If you've ever been to the beach, you have seen this aquatic biome. Our coral reefs are also marine, where we have warm, shallow waters. It is the most diverse marine biome. The problem is that they are experiencing pollutants and sediments that make it harder for the corals to survive. So I know lots of sunscreens now will say that they are reef safe because some of the pollutants that were harming the coral reefs were from sunscreens that wash off into the water. The big issue here is coral bleaching, where the algae inside of the corals die, which leads to the corals turning white. Scientists think that it is caused by a combination of things like lowering of the ocean pH, which is caused by ocean acidification, that we will talk about later in the year, and a warmer ocean temperatures that, of course, is being caused by global climate change. The open ocean is away from the shoreline, or where all of our classic ocean organisms that we think about live. There are 3 zones: the photic zone, that gets enough sunlight for photosynthesis to occur; the aphotic zone, where sunlight does not reach very well; and then, of course, the benthic zone.